Summer League with the Sacramento Kings. What was
Mhm.
your biggest takeaway after seeing Keegan Murray up close?
He looks like he belongs. He
Mm-hmm.
looks like a guy who I like that Jordi Fernandez started California Classic and Summer League in general and said like the biggest priority is to make sure that Keegan Murray belongs and we develop him and that that everything you've heard about Keegan Murray, whether you watched him in college or not, translates to Summer League, which I caution people is not the NBA. But it's the first taste of an NBA experience. So I think my biggest takeaway is he didn't disappoint for sure. I mean, he obviously won the MVP award. He was impactful. He was a positive type player, even when he struggled, with turnovers and shooting. But kind of more than anything, guys, like to me, this wasn't surprising.
Mm-hmm.
He did exactly what. And again, I mean, if you weren't familiar with Keegan Murray, then you're just not really kind of a college basketball fan, and that's okay because I know that it happens during NBA season, so it's a lot of times where people are just so solely focused on the NBA, and that's great. So I can understand people's excitement, but I pump the brakes a little bit if they think he's going to be the best rookie based off of a few summer league games. But I don't blame people for being excited. Like you should probably be excited, and you should have been excited whether or not he played summer league or not. Like you got the number 4 pick, and he's a guy who's known for scoring and can do a lot of intriguing things on the basketball floor. So he was surrounded himself with a group of people that he had the ability to be around a little bit longer than most of the teams competing in summer league, and that's by virtue of being able to play at the California Classic and kind of hopped to it right away. And I think he definitely played the part. I think he looked great. And I'm very intrigued to see what he looks like around actual NBA talent.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean he I like the way he can. I think the only thing that surprised me the most, I think I mentioned it to you guys, kind of said it a lot by now. So, if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. I get that when I get this age, I do that. But he he gets to a point where people talk about like you in your NBA career, whether it's a 6 months in, 2 seasons in, whatever, they'll say the game slows down for you. But I feel like to a certain degree, he's already at that point. Like there are elements of his game where he just lets the game come to him, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I do know I talked to a few people that they think that that's area of improvement, so it's almost like a negative, but I don't feel like it's a negative. And Doug Christie was really hard on him after I think it maybe the Orlando game where he wasn't being assertive enough on the offensive end and wanted him to be to treat himself like a number one scoring option, and certainly he did that against Chet Holmgren in the Thunder in the following game. But like he even when he tries to press a little bit, it's interesting to see. He wants to be a good teammate. You can really kind of see him working through it. But more than anything, I just feel like basketball is everything's just kind of easy. It's not this like mechanical trying to force, trying to do too much, and really more than anything, he looks like he belongs. Like there's a
Yeah.
He
fluidity
just
to his
has a
game.
nice feel, right? And it's
Yeah.
like not only does he, you talk about his maturity, obviously being the older rookie, but you mentioned that whole thing with Doug Christie, just talking about him being more assertive. Did Keegan Murray exceed your expectations? And with that, I mean, even with his ability within summer league to make those adjustments as a rookie to become more assertive, like, is that what you expected out of him this whole time, or did he like exceed your expectations?
I mean, I expected him just by virtue of being that number 4 pick. I expected him to come out and press and try to score and get up shots, and he did. I think there was a game where he took 12 of his 16 shots were from the perimeter, and I was like, okay, well that's weird. Like I don't know if that's necessarily something we needed to see, but I knew he was going to get a lot of shots and take scoring opportunities. But that being said, like I didn't I didn't expect him to be as impactful in other areas of the game. Uh, with this type of team around him. like showing the ability to play make, advancing the ball. Um, I think he rebounded just as good as I thought he would. But again, like I just the feel for the game is just totally there, and even with the turnovers, like that's to be expected. But sometimes I've covered too many summer league teams, especially Kings ones, where guys will go out there and struggle to shoot the ball or turn the ball over, and the game is just awful. Like they're just a big negative on the floor. And that just really wasn't the case with Keegan Murray. And I think that's super encouraging when you can struggle through a shot, struggle through turnovers, and still impact the game in a positive way. That's pretty encouraging sign.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to hear conversation about Keegan now after Summer League because it's not only social media, but some of the media reaction locally about the pick I thought was borderline ridiculous.
Yeah.
I just, because it goes back to what Sean was saying, this is not as if like Keegan Murray averaged 10 a game last year and it was a ridiculous reach to draft him at 4. There's clearly some teams interested in him at 4 in moving up. And there were teams throughout the lottery that would love to have someone like Keegan Murray. But I felt like there was so much, Jaden Ivey, it's only a 4-player draft. Anytime I hear that before a draft, I go, stop it. I think we hear that every year, and it turns out, there's actually multiple players that went later that can contribute at a high level. So I do think the fan base probably needed to see this. It just be like, okay, he is good, and he's not a reach. They needed to see something. It's not the end-all, be-all, because like you said, it is Summer League, but he did so many good things out there that I think more people are encouraged now, especially compared to draft night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I also think, it's very like this doesn't mean he's going to be an all-star player.
Right.
And again, I would never pick that for him. I'd be pleasantly surprised if that happens. Again, I think when people look at when they start talking about like, this is a 3 or 4 player draft, they talk about in terms of star potential. But that doesn't mean you can't have a player that comes in and is an absolutely sensational player. There's plenty of really impactful players that don't make all-star teams and aren't superstar players. So I agree with you. I think it is good for people to see your pick, particularly at number 4, absolutely excel in different ways than Davion Mitchell did last year when he won co-MVP, and do it in a more traditional fashion where it is scoring, rebounding, defense, playmaking, and just overall winning. Like I know you were 3-2, but I also, I absolutely applaud whoever was picking the schedule, and I mean particularly in Vegas.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you.
That's our guy.
I want to write a thank you card. I mean,
we know him. We know him.
Do you? Well,
no,
okay,
for real.
Let me write him a thank you card, because this wasn't just go in there and play against some schleps. Like, you're getting Paolo Banchero, you're getting Chet Holmgren, you're getting Benedict Mathurin, then you play the Suns. And then, like, had he not played, he didn't play. Keegan Murray didn't play against Houston, but he would have been playing against Jabari Smith, man. Like, that's your top 5 right there. And
that's a good schedule right there.
Honestly, elite schedule maker.
Right.
But Sean too, because you keep talking about with Keegan Murray and him as, like, if he ended up being an all-star, great, you'd be pleasantly surprised, all those things. He's going to start next year, right?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Oh,
does he have to?
Okay.
Yes.
No,
Does he have to?
Well,
Yes,
that's
Sean.
the thing. I used to think like, no, I don't. Like, that's not a big deal. I felt like after Summer League, to me, and I get it. Trust me, I factor everything in. I understand it's Summer League. I know it's not NBA caliber players, but to me, in a lot of ways, I look at the rest of the roster on the Sacramento Kings. I'm like, doesn't it seem like he would be your starter in that 4 spot?
There's still a lot of offseason left, but you still have guys like Harrison Barnes on your team, and you still have
A wing.
He's playing the 3.
I know,
Yeah.
true, probably playing the 3, but like, let's pretend the season begins tomorrow. Like, I've had it explained to me, like, I mean, you could. I'm not saying I would do this lineup, so don't hate me, Kings fans. And I know that some of them already hated that I've said this already, but like, I can envision a world where where you've got, as I clear my throat, as you've got Rashawn Holmes at the 5, Demonis Sabonis at the 4, Harrison Barnes at the 3, Kevin Herter at the 2, and De'Aaron Fox at the 1. And I don't think that's, part of me kind of wants to see it, but I don't think it's terrible. It's probably not the lineup I'd go with. But to your point about like, does he start? Like, I don't know. There's training camp. Like, that's why you have training camp, and you don't need to necessarily have him go out there and fail. He looks like an ultra confident player. He doesn't seem like someone that's going to lose his confidence. But I still think Mike Brown is going to be very. I think he's going to be strategic with what he does, and I think he's going to be all about defense. And I think he knows that second unit is going to be just as important as who he starts. But I also think, like, for anyone who cringes over the fact that Rashawn Holmes and Demonis Sabonis will possibly play together, like, you do that and then you stagger them so that one of them is on the floor at all times. And granted, they're different players, but those are, like it or not, those are your bigs. Like Alex Len doesn't really factor much into that equation. Maybe a little bit, who knows? And then you just kind of let it go from there. I don't know that he's going to go 10 deep. I don't think he'll go any more than really 9 deep. So however the roster looks like, which again, I caution people, we have a ton of offseason left as we record this, or we're live. Hey, we're live, everybody.
Yes.
July 19th. So, well, again, there's just so much more that can happen. And to come out here and anoint him a starter, I don't know. I certainly don't agree with it. I don't think that would be the case. I think you have to have several things play out. But would it surprise me? Probably a little bit. I don't know that I would bet on him being a starter.
Really?
I know, that's why
and by the way, I'm not even saying like, oh, he should be because he's a number 4 pick. I just think like some of the stuff we just talked about. What we saw, I know it's summer league and I don't need it. It's just summer league guy coming in, but
he looks ready.
Yeah, good feel for the game. You can shoot it. And I think, that lineup you had mentioned, it's like the spacing to me is just not good enough. Even if you are bullish on Sabonis improving his 3-point shot, what's it really going to look like? Like, best case scenario for Sabonis in the 3-point shot if it gets better. I mean, maybe 35%. That'd be amazing. I'd take that from him. I would take that for him. But, like, I just think having some nice size at that 4 spot, the shooting, the off-ball movement, it feels like he'd almost be the perfect guy for that starting lineup. And your front line would have some decent size with Barnes, with Keegan, and with Sabonis.
Right. And then, but there's another world where, okay, you don't start Rashawn and you go Sabonis at the center and you go Harrison at the 4, you go Herter at the 3, Monk at the 2. I mean, there's just.
Why are you trying to bench Keegan Murray today?
Well, not only that, and I feel like the amount of times that we saw Barnes at the 4 in it's just not a position that. Not to say that he can't, because he did well when he played in that position, but then it took away so many other things that he could excel at and contribute to this team that needs a lot of shit, So it was like, great, Harrison Barnes can contribute on that end of the floor, being able to guard wings, being able to also on the offensive end be a scorer, cut off the ball, especially with someone like a big like Sabonis that can pass the ball. I don't know. I know it's not like 100% he should be starting. But we did also see with Tyrese Halliburton, again, different coach, different time. But when there was times Buddy starting over him, and it's like, let Tyrese play. Like, let this young guy play. And in Sacramento, I just feel like young guys have to contribute early, especially if they're capable of doing it.
Well, I think both can be true. Like, you have to be able to contribute. But, there's a sense of earn it. You have to
For
earn
sure.
it.
I'm with that. You need that competitiveness. Like, that sets the culture.
And with due respect to Keegan and what happened in summer league, that doesn't mean shit once training camp happens. Like, that doesn't mean anything.
Absolutely.
So, especially when you've got, you're trying to set a culture and you've got guys that do it the right way. And look, I think it's easy to look at what Keegan Murray brings to the floor and go, you have to have that on the floor. Sure, you do. I agree. You don't really have another stretch 4 like that, except for maybe Harrison if you put him there. But I also feel like there's so much that gets made over starters that
I'm with you.
You have to look at the complete picture about, like, just because you start that way. And I think we saw so often where Demonis Sabonis would start the game and he's out in 4 minutes. Fox pretty much played the entire first quarter. In summer league, again, this doesn't matter, but you were seeing Keegan play the entire first and third quarters, um, and then he'd come back in the latter half, or in the latter few minutes of the second and fourth. So, yeah, I think it's gonna be fun to watch. I just want to see what it looks like. I want to see what this team looks like. I still think that there's probably a move on the horizon, and as I kind of joked yesterday, like, uh, Monty McNair at that press conference that we were both at, where he's introducing Kevin Herter and Malik Monk, he several times said that they're not done. And I feel like he said it so much he should have just worn it on a T-shirt that they're not done. And it's an ever evolving situation when you try to build a roster, because it's never done. And I'm glad he acknowledged that.
But Sean, do you think that's a bit of GM speak a little bit? You know what I mean?
No.
Like, really?
I mean, not really, because again, what do we know about Monty McNair? He tries to attach himself to everything. Just there's a lot of times where you're having conversations, and we've famously already seen it, where things don't really come to fruition, but it isn't for lack of trying and having conversations and attaching yourself, trying to attach yourself to deals. So.
I agree with that. I'm not even saying that he's lying about it. I just think what GM in the NBA is not actively looking to improve at all times. Like, that's literally the job.
Yeah, but I would even say what GM would introduce two new shooters and continually say, we're not done, we're not done, we're not done. You don't need to say that. It's about them. It's about Kevin Herter, bringing in Kevin Herter and Malik Monk and introducing them as your new shooters and your biggest offseason acquisitions, and to beat a drum to say, we're not done, we're not done, we're not done. I think kind of stood out a little bit to me.
Yeah, and with so much in the NBA, I mean, you've got Donovan Mitchell likely to be moved, Durant, who knows about Kyrie, or John Collins, who has been talked about forever getting moved. He's still in Atlanta. Do the Kings get involved in some of these deals? Can they attach as like a third team and get some help? That could be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it doesn't look like they'll use their biannual exception. I wouldn't bet on it. I think they'll probably save that for next year. But you have a pretty sizable trade exception that's a little bit like $4.5 million, and another one that's right around 1 point whatever. And those you've got movable contracts. You've got a lot of expiring pieces. A lot of guys that don't make a hell of a lot, but it's some that do. So I know everyone's kind of circled Rashawn Holmes and Harrison Barnes as those likely trade targets, and that's probably smart to do. But I think there's other possibilities that exist, and they're gonna have conversations about everybody to try to make this team better. And I said it yesterday on the radio, like, you don't make a move in trading for Domantas Sabonis and not be aggressive. Like, you're gonna have to. You have to. This signified a shift in your franchise and the outlook of what you're trying to accomplish, and it's the win now versus a rebuild, and you're kind of all in and need to go out there and obviously be smart, but you have to go out there and make moves that are going to position yourself to absolutely compete in the, like, this. That was a huge fast forward compared to where you were just 2 years ago.
What do you think of the Monk and Huerter additions?
Oh yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I first of all, I think it's great when you can get a guy coming off a career year, someone like Malik Monk, especially when you're playing in a situation like the Lakers. Like, they didn't have a lot of bright spots last year, and he was one of them. It also represented somebody who's kind of got his life figured out a little bit, and those are pretty well documented. Some of his issues that he's had since coming into the league, and I think surrounding him with somebody that he knows the best, and De'Aaron Fox, I think not only works well for him, but I mean, if anyone saw the interview I did with Fox before going down to Vegas, to me, that was one of, I mean, I don't want to make too much of it, but I thought it was it's one of I was like, is this the most excited I've heard De'Aaron Fox before a season? And he's going into his 6th NBA season, all of which are here in Sacramento. And I don't think it's necessarily because of Malik. I think it certainly that plays a part, but just listen to him talk about Mike Brown and Mike Brown making him a priority while he's dealing with a playoff series, and not only going down and working out with him, but the familiarity that his soon to be wife Rasay has with Luke Laux. I mean, she's somebody who's interned with the Warriors and knows him very well. And I can't remember the last time Fox was not only training with somebody that wasn't his agent,
Yeah.
but I mean, he's taking Luke and Jesse Green, one of the athletic trainers, with him to on his honeymoon to Italy. I mean, that's just stuff that you wouldn't really see a whole lot of before. Like I don't know if it's a maturity, you can call it whatever you want, but there's an excitement there. And I think maybe it took De'Aaron coming off of a pretty weird season, which was very un-Fox like. And then you saw a glimpse of it after they traded for Sabonis, and he kind of looked like himself and kind of like the Fox we've seen before. So, and people had been excited about. So, um, whatever it is, like, to me, that was one of the that again, maybe I'm making too much of it, but I asked a lot of people their takeaway from that interview, and they kind of came away with the same thing. And so, if it's a combination of Malik Monk and Mike Brown, great. But your initial question, I'm just as big over Kevin Herter. I think that's a tremendous addition. And I know people have criticized the locking up your draft picks to get him. If you're in the lottery, or if you have a top 10 or 12 pick after making this move in 2024, and you don't basically convey that pick to Atlanta, then you've got bigger problems. And I think this is the problem. This won't put the handlebars on the organization and tie up your draft picks too long, because I think that pick will absolutely be conveyed to Atlanta, and that's a good thing. And I think Kevin Herter is going to be a massive addition to this team. I like him a lot. And if Kings fans don't watch a lot of Atlanta Hawks basketball, well, you certainly saw him light you up in
Yep.
the regular season. So
King's
and
killer.
he does it on both ends of the floor. Both of them are kind of sneaky defenders and sneaky playmakers, but also really good shooters. So yeah, I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
seeing that. You're
No,
not done. You need more than that, but
no,
yeah.
it's right. There's still many holes to fill, but like I was excited about Kevin Herter when the rumors started with John Collins possibly being packaged in that deal, whatever the hell they were thinking about doing. And there is so much more that he can do as like this young guy, 6'8" shooter that can also is very capable of defending, not only because he's a bigger body, but he's a smart player too, right? Like gets his hands in the passing lanes and everything. But I want to go back to your conversation with De'Aaron Fox. Great job, by the way, because it was.
Hey, thanks.
That's, to be honest, that's all Sean was looking for, was just like, hey,
Can I get
I
a
got
great
a
job?
lot of Fox.
Yeah. Like, come on, someone give me a great job. Can I get a great job? So you're getting it. And it was great though. And sometimes I think that goes to you and players respecting you and being comfortable with you. But with this conversation specifically, I think it's exactly what you're saying. Like it seems like De'Aaron Fox is in higher spirits, is more excited about this season. And for some people, I think they're like, well, why couldn't he just be excited all the other season? And it's frustrating to see, but we're not seeing everything that goes on behind the scenes with everyone, teammates, front office, whatever. We might hear things here and there, but whether it is the addition of Malik Monk and just a GM that is, competent in putting certain pieces around him to better his game as well, it seems like he's in different spirits. But do you also believe that we are going to actually get a different De'Aaron Fox on the floor this season too?
Yeah, I think so. By virtue of him having the ball back in his hands, I think it's going to go a long way. That's the first part. Second part is, and watch how I do this one, Morgan. If you thought the Fox thing was good, sitting down with Mike Brown in Las Vegas.
We were going to get to that.
No, he wants to play fast. Everyone says that, and obviously, Mike Brown's systems don't typically play very fast, but he recognizes that he has a Ferrari, and he's going to have to lean on De'Aaron a lot to initiate that and keep his foot on the pedal, which is something he hasn't done. Sometimes he's that good teammate that has to wait for everyone to catch up. Sometimes he just doesn't. Just keep the foot on the pedal and keep going. But also, in this part, didn't make the interview. I don't think he'd mind me sharing though. Is afterwards we talked about the way he came into camp last year, where he had added some bulk to him, and he's like, I'm not doing that again. Like it took away from what he was trying. What he ultimately felt comfortable the most. He'll certainly. I think there's other ways to do it, but he's going to keep the weight about where he's been, which is hovers around 200 pounds, 195, 190, something like that. And uh, it, it just fits his frame a little bit better for him. I think. I think it impacted his shot, but I also think it was just a bad combination of that and playing off ball, which is something he's never really done before. And I think he's going to have to learn again how to play off ball, especially if they end up adding hopefully another point guard before the season starts. It's something that's just going to be necessary for him, and he's going to, and especially when you're playing through a guy like Domantas Sabonis. So I think a lot of it, I think they've just realized how much Fox is going to have to be crucial for their success. And like it or not, whether, I know Tyrese Halliburton's gone and De'Aaron had the contract and Tyrese looked like he could easily have filled that void, and people would probably rather see Fox leave. I think the Kings might have been the same in terms of just the money and this being a business and what they had tied up. But uh, when you get a contract like that, it can be harder to move, especially if you're trying to move it and get better. That's tough to do. So they both realize that they kind of need each other. They're stuck with each other, and um, I think I think they're both fine with that. But now it's kind of an earn it. Now you got to go out and earn it.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. We'll see how it plays out because I got the sense his mentality was shifting a bit post trade. And then even in that press conference right after the season, when he was just talking, he was asked about like, hey, what do they need in the head coach? And he was just talking about the need for structure. And I don't know, that jumped out to me. And then just hearing him with you, yeah, he seems like he's got the right mindset. And I think part of it too is, he's been here 5 years and looking around going, can I get some help? And
Right.
not that Halliburton wasn't help. Halliburton's, I really like his game, and I think he's going to be a really good player in this league. But, obviously that fit wasn't great between the two for whatever reason. And getting another talented guy like Sabonis, who's going to command a double team and who's so good with the ball and getting some shooting around, I think he's more excited than he has been in the last couple of years when, to be fair, Monty didn't exactly do a lot besides draft Mitchell and Halliburton. And then it was just moves on the fringes. It was a Whiteside deal, Glenn Robinson, Kaminsky, just nothing that really moved the needle. This year, it feels like, oh, it's a fresh start. It's not only new pieces, it's a new coaching staff. It's probably just good vibes for him. And it's also him understanding probably the importance for him to do well and the team to do well for his own sake.
Yeah, he recognizes it. He recognizes that he's got the best player he's ever played with in the NBA, and he's massive and he can move the ball and do a lot of different things, and that excitement really hasn't left. But now he's got shooting around him too. Like if you look at, I always used to say that I thought a lot of the criticisms of Buddy was kind of unfair because Buddy was just still at the end of the day, Buddy Hield. Like he didn't really change. He tried to be a good teammate, tried to put him in position to be a playmaker. It's like, no, man, just let him do what he does. And they had to have him do more because they didn't have talent very deep on this roster. A lot of unproven talent, you could argue that, but like I would always say that like if Buddy Hield's like your second or third best player, which they needed him to be, then that's a problem. And they had to pay him to be that. You need him to be more like, what you see typical spot up shooters do. And that's why the likes of LA and these teams that are perennial playoff teams were interested in him because they recognize what he could bring and not have him be a best player, come in and be surrounded by a couple alpha males and tell him, no, this is what you're going to do. This is the system you're going to fit into. And I think he flourished in Indiana. I thought that the pressure was off. So I think it's going to be good for him. And I think everyone realized that when Buddy Hield got traded, it's probably not only the best for him, like he could go to another situation and flourish because he'd have better talent around him. And I think it just spoke to the lack of talent that was in Sacramento at the time.
Yeah, and I think too, we've seen this over the years in Sacramento, just like how I was talking about with Harrison Barnes. You can't just be good at your position. And I understand the NBA has evolved into positionless basketball, blah, blah. But when you're on the Sacramento Kings, you are going to be asked to do way more. So it's going to challenge you way more to push yourself to a different limit. And I think with someone like Buddy Hield, he he didn't understand that until a later part of his time in Sacramento, and also just a later part in his career. And so you're right. Maybe now somewhere he can be, well, especially in Indiana, be that guy that can be that spot up shooter and check up those shots. I really wanted to go back now to your conversation with Mike Brown, and I want to know if anything else stood out to you in that conversation.
Yeah, I mean the playing style and how much he's talking about leaning on his veterans in Sabonis, but particularly Fox. Like he mentioned, like it's not going to be like you got a honeymoon period, but it's not always going to be good times. You know, like he's going to have to lean on him a lot, and I think the best part of Fox recognizing that there's a structure and discipline and a system that they needed in a head coach, and they're going to get that on steroids with Mike Brown. And you know, we talked about it a lot, like the stuff that I'd heard about Mike Brown and known about him from just covering the league as long as I have, and everyone talking about him being this OCD type of coach, which they all are, we know, but his OCD is a little bit weirder than maybe some others. And I kind of called him on it. I was like, "Hey, I've heard this," and he's just like, "Oh yeah, no, that's true." And maybe it's subsided a little bit with experience and some of the stops that he's made along the way, and his successes and failures, and those have been well documented. But when you come to Sacramento and you don't really have that superstar player, and you have a team that's just hungry for any level of success, like making a play-in tournament, takes a pressure off. And so I think he recognizes that bringing, I mean, you hear so many people talk about it so often in culture, and it's like, not even that, man, just bringing something that is a system, and trusting that system and the mechanisms that are in place for a team to grow and be successful. And him having that bullet point corny PowerPoint presentation he was like showing in his press conference, it wasn't wrong, but those pillars of success, if you will, those things that need to be in place in order for an organization to succeed, and him identifying that and trying to put everybody on the same page and people to really embrace their roles and not be something that they're not. So important, just so important. And that's just look, I don't think Mike Brown's the best coach in the NBA, don't get me wrong, but I think he might be, of the 7 that were considered. I said he's the one I'd hire, but he might be the right coach at the right time for the Kings, because coming off of what they had with Dave Yeager and then to Luke Walton, like I feel like they took a step backwards, and that's no real disrespect to Luke. It's just I think what his method was, and what was surrounding the organization and the talent that they had at the time. Going from Yeager to Luke was a step back in success, and I think you can look at the win totals, and that kind of bears fruit. But I think now that you've got players like De'Aaron, who had both Luke and Dave, and they recognize that they were better under Dave, and Dave had more of a structure and had more of a system, if you will, and it wasn't so. I don't want to say casual or laid back, but it wasn't. It was just a little bit looser. Basketball was a little bit more free under Luke, and they wanted to have a freeness to them, as opposed to somebody calling out plays every 5 minutes or every 5 seconds. So I think you'll see a little bit more of that, but I still think they're going to want some free flow to them. They want, Mike Brown's going to want to have a system that was like the Warriors, where you can have pace, you can have free flowing ball movement and all that, but a commitment to defense as well. You also need talent. So I think that's going to be the tough part. Year 1 could be a little janky, and as they often are under new head coaches, but this is the fun part. This is where you get to see them actually grow.
Vegas, in their initial over-under, has the Kings projected for 31.5 wins. Sean, I know you're pretty good. That's good. I'm sorry?
That's pretty good.
Stop it. So low. They were at like 36.5 last year. They're clearly better.
I'm not stunned about how low it is, by the way, Sean. That's
right.
Deuce.
What did they finish? How many wins they have last year? 30?
30. And they got better, and they added some bonus.
Yeah.
I just think if you're looking at, the start of last year with that roster.
But here's the other thing too, Sean, because I'm more along the lines with you, where I'm also like, even if they did get get better. You just mentioned it when you were just talking about Mike Brown and like, hey, first year head coaches, things are always a little janky. Like you've got to grow together. People just think it's not like you're plugging in a LeBron James, a Jason Tatum and some other guy and being like, all right, now it should be at like 38 wins or whatever the hell you want to put it at Vegas. So it's like you made the roster better, but other teams in the West, one, are better. Other teams in the division are better, which the Kings play more games against those guys. So I'm fine with 31.5, even though I do believe it's a little low, but whatever.
I honestly, my pushback right there, I don't know that you could say the division's better. The Lakers are what? Still the Lakers. They're still messy.
LeBron, AD.
The Warriors lost a lot of key pieces. They did. And they're still going to be good.
Healthy Clippers.
The Clippers, sure. And then the Suns. Did we see Game 7 last year against the Mavs?
One game, bruh.
Okay. Okay. See, you're going to downplay
that.
That.
They got to play Game 7.
You're going to downplay all of that. That's fine. That's fine.
I'm not downplaying.
Okay.
Sean, now what's your opinion on the 31.5?
So yeah, likely the Spurs are going to be worse, right? We're going to have the Spurs worse. Utah will be worse. Minnesota's going to be better. And I think with the Lakers, they're just going to be healthier. And I think that's at least the mindset there.
Anthony Davis is going to be healthier. You're going to take that bet, but 31
and LeBron, hopefully, I think for Laker fans, I think they're used to Anthony Davis being hurt.
LeBron and DeRozan won by 2 points in the Drew League.
Why are you even like they get out of here?
Okay.
What Deuce is saying, he's going to go bet the house on the over here. Yeah.
I am just honestly, that number floored me. If you would have put it at like 36,
not floored,
36.5, I'd been like, okay, that's about the same as last year. Whatever, they got to prove things. It's Sacramento. I get all that. The West, 31.5 is utterly ridiculous, and people are going to make a lot of money if they bet on that stuff. I think. What's your best case?
You know where I stand on this though, because like,
what's your best case, worst case for the Kings then? Let's say best case.
You got to see it. You got to see it first. You don't.
I understand that, but you watch the NBA, you could see it on paper as we approach the season.
I'm with you, Sean.
God, you fence sitters here. I mean, they got better. You just you're talking about how much you like Huerter and Monk and how they can help. Sabonis and Fox is in good spirits. They add Keegan Murray. I mean, what's the best case? Okay, let me ask you this. Just like I asked Morgan, I feel like, God, again, interviewing another politician here, dancing around the question.
God.
I did the same thing to Morgan. Can they be over 500 next year?
No. Wow. I think they can be. I don't think they will be.
Okay, that's fine.
I said that same thing. There we go. See, we didn't sit on a fence with that.
Yeah, like I also, again, this team still has a lot of holes to it. Most 500 basketball teams have pretty complete rosters that you're ready to compete with, and I don't think they're ready to compete yet. I don't think they're there yet. They have players I like, and they have things I like, and I was kind of realizing this last night where sometimes fans you can say some good things about Neemias Queta, for example, right?
Yeah,
Neemias Queta, and I think some people might be really high and he's ready to be a roster player on the Kings. No, I wouldn't be there quite yet. And I know I was having a conversation with Damian last night, Damian Barling, and Damian was pretty high from what he saw with Neemias in summer league, and I said, well, I think what it looks like to me, and again, I was a little pretty critical of what he looked like in California Classic. I think he looked better towards the back end, but I think he's on the right path. Like two-way player, still being there. I need him to play more in Stockton.
Yes,
I need him to be. I'd like him to go out there and be a 20-point scorer and do so efficiently and rebound the hell out of the ball and be a monster like he is. I think it was super impactful for him to be around the team last year and see what NBA culture is all about. I think it's going to be even better for him to be around somebody like Sabonis and say, hey, this is what life could be like. This is what maybe you should strive to be like. Only maybe a better defender and whatever else. This could be what you project to be down the road. By no means do I think he's an NBA player. And I think people are ready to move on from Alex Len, and I don't blame them, but I think Alex Len is a hell of a lot more skilled center than Neemias Queta is right now. He also has the benefit of...
I don't know about skilled. I mean, I'm borderline.
Experience.
I think Queta...
definitely
has upside for sure. I think especially to start the year, just have him in Stockton, get those minutes, get
Yeah.
some real time, because there's so many times last year I felt like he was
In between.
in Sacramento too much for not even playing. And you're right, there's some benefit to just being around an NBA squad, picking Sabonis' brain, all that stuff, but like he just needs to play.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Len, what I mean by that too is like Alex Len has the intangibles. He knows, he's a professional. He knows what works for him. He knows how to work in a system. I don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's a great player. I don't think he's a great player. In fact, I wouldn't have made that signing. I've famously said that, but
Famously.
just famously, no, famously for some people in the organization who didn't appreciate me saying that. But again, like that's a former number 1 pick, man. Like there's people who still like what Alex Len can bring to a basketball team. It's just it didn't work, and you were surrounded by so many big men, and Keita is just so raw and still not there yet. And yeah, it could project well down the road. Sure, I get it. They're high on him, they like him, but this is exactly where he needs to be. So just using that in mind, like somebody gives somebody credit about what they can be, what they could bring. That doesn't mean that, hey, that's what they're going to be next season. And sometimes people read that a little wrong. Like KZ Okpala, Chimezi Metu, Chima Moneki, guys like that who come in and you like them, you like what they can bring and what they can provide. And certainly there's boxes they check, but doesn't mean it's going to translate to wins and losses. Like you can still do better than those players, like in the NBA. So, yeah, man, like I just, to me, when it comes to picking win totals and looking at rosters and saying what a team should be, I don't like it because, to me, I have to see it first. Like I can't, someone can't tell me, dude, it's been 16 years of this shit. So you can't just sit there and say, like, they should be this, they should be that. Like I agree with you in theory. Like the expectation of you being in the upper half of the NBA, yeah, you should be there.
That's
right?
all I'm asking. I'm not, again,
Yeah.
I don't need a specific thing, but I think we can all look at rosters around the league and before a season go, hey,
In theory,
that team should be pretty good.
Sure.
That
Is
team
this
should
team
work.
is this team incrementally better defensively, do you think? Because I don't.
No, I don't think defensively. No, I mean, I think they're banking on things that we haven't totally seen, where it's like, hey, Brown can Brown put a system together. You've got smart, high IQ guys. You don't have a ton of lockdown defenders all over this roster, but I think he can put some guys in a position to be improved defensively. And again, it all, in my opinion, starts with De'Aaron Fox, because I still think Fox can be a solid defensive player in this league, and he showed times in certain matchups against like bigger guys last year he could do it, but he's got to do it from the get, and he's got to be engaged completely on that end. But I'm also not under any type of thought that they're going to go from like 30th to 10th.
No.
Can they go from 30th to 22nd? Like if they do that and the offense is better, they should be just a better team.
I think you look at the high IQ guys and it makes you a little bit more excited on the defensive end. But I also am excited to see what Mike Brown can bring. My expectations, because I think a lot of people have these expectations like, look what he did to Andrew Wiggins. He's totally going to do that with, De'Aaron Fox or whoever the hell. And it's like, oh, no, it doesn't just work like that. Like they have other very, very good defenders on this squad to also have in place to work with, And so with the Kings, his system is going to have to be the system that works where you plug in these guys and they all buy in. And even when you're there, how many times can you practice that before you get into all? I said it's going to take like 20 games for them to get that down and really have that trust and understand each other at a higher level defensively. And hey, you guys, we saw it too happen with a first-year head coach and Ime Udoka in Boston with the Celtics.
But also some very talented defensive players.
And some very talented defensive players.
Marcus Smart and
absolutely
Jaylen Brown
but
and Robert Williams.
But look how they
Horford.
turned it. They evolved into something better.
I see what
and
you're
that's
saying.
all I'm
Yeah.
saying is that the Kings could still. I'm not saying turn it to that level, but you might see that growth after 20 games or something.
Yeah, and you're right. They turned it around. I mean, things were going really bad for a while.
Right.
And then they inject like Al Horford life into them, which is hilarious. And things all of a sudden, and they've, you've got incredible, incredible talent. And I think at the end of the day, you can do any system you want. You can have whatever. You can have, Red Auerbach in his prime. talent's going to win out. And I still think, while I like the talent better, I just don't think it's enough. And, they haven't played any games yet, and still we have a lot of off season left. So I hope to be where Deuce is by like October 1st.
What I am stunned by,
another move.
I don't even think I'm being like overly crazy
You're
I'm
not,
looking
but
at
you're
this
very
roster.
optimistic.
If you have Fox and Sabonis, who I like both those guys, and you
Right.
had shooting around it,
Yeah.
Keegan, I think, can help right away.
In theory,
I think
it sounds
Davion's going to
great.
be, I think the coaching's going to be better. I think Davion's going to be better. I just think this is one of their most talented rosters over this last 16-year
Sure.
drought, which I know is not saying a ton. But yeah, I think offensively, there's some real promise in the Fox Sabonis pick and roll with shooting around it. I do think Keegan's going to be impactful from day one. I'm not saying like 20 a game or anything like that, but I think he's going to be able to knock down shots, and he's going to be able to play some solid defense out there. I just think they're a better team, and I don't think saying around 500 is some ridiculous. I'll be honest, I'd be really disappointed if they weren't at 500.
Jeez.
Yeah.
No, Deuce is like
No.
an optimistic realist, where we're like just realists, you
Okay.
know?
That's fine.
Mine
And
is more cautiously optimistic, because
Okay.
I do like the pieces.
I'm
Like I
just a
said, I do
realist.
like the pieces, but you start comparing them to other teams in the league, and there's a more complete product, if you will. And I just don't know. Like right now, they got a lot of holes, man. You could use another stretch four. You could use a 3-and-D. You can use
Rim
a
protector.
backup point guard. Yeah, I mean, there's
but okay. For example, let me
like
bring this
the
up.
depth, the quality depth on the team is still not there. Like we talked about that last year. I was very critical of the offseason. People were like, "Oh, they're going to be this." I'm like, "Well, what?" Like I didn't think so. And I said, "There's a difference between depth and quality depth. Just because you have pieces that, yes, technically play a position, doesn't mean that's quality depth. Because all you have to look at is go, will this person be higher player
Man,
or whatever on another team? Would he fit the same role on another team? Let's take Terrence Davis. If he was on Phoenix, where does he rank out? If he was on
Hell, he may
Indiana,
not.
where does he rank
Davis may not get run in Sacramento this year based on the moves
Right.
they made.
Well, and
I mean,
just, yeah.
I mean, look, Rashawn Holmes was a starter last year.
Mm-hmm.
In all likelihood, he's coming off the bench, right? Like
And
Malik Monk or Kevin Huerter is coming off your bench. Like you're clearly, I think that is way better.
Way
depth
better
than
depth.
Trey Lyles, he may not even play, but Trey Lyles is a nice bench contributor that I think could help some teams around the league. I don't know. It's fine. They've got the track record of being shitty for 16 years, and maybe I'm having an easier time separating it. I'm just looking at things and going, I could see it. I'm not acting like they're not flawed. I think defensively is a huge question. Rim protection, yeah, legit questions for sure. And then, someone like Casey Okpala, I like him. I think that's like a high upside guy. It's low risk, high upside, but like, is he going to be impactful? Like,
Right.
I don't know. Like, yeah, there's that the wing depth isn't fantastic. I just think overall they're a much better team on paper than by far the start of last year.
100% agree with that.
At the end of last year.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I'm just, I appreciate where you are cautiously, Sean. I appreciate myself
You guys are
and my
cowards.
realistic views.
You guys aren't going to say they're good until they're good, and that's fine. I'm just
That's
And
not
you know what,
true.
though? But if you go back to the original point, the 31.5, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, yes, please take the over, because, it's your money. but it's also like Monty McNair and Wes Wilcox, they're looking at it and they go, hell yeah, they better be better than 31.5 games, right? You're putting the product together. If you're not, it's a colossal failure, man. So like, I get it. Like I get it. And that's the hope. And I think Deuce subscribes to that hope. Me, it's just, if it's my money, I'll bet against, and I'll be right more times than not if you're looking at how many times they've made the playoffs in the past 16 years.
well, they're not going to be bad forever, guys. I know that it seems
Deuce,
crazy.
Deuce
They're not.
says that, and
I've said it every year since 2010. They're not going to be better. They're not going to be bad forever.
Not going to be bad forever.